So the closer you are to retirement, the more the rules around your TSP withdrawals matters. Right? My name is Mahmoud Bojang. I'm here with Tony Nue, Axiom Valley, one of the advisors here. In this YouTube channel, we're going to be talking about your federal benefits, how they can impact you, and most importantly, how your withdrawals matter in your TSP. So Tony, we've seen a lot about TSP withdrawals, and our clients come to the office and about TSP withdrawals and all that, but I think people get shocked in terms of like when we tell them that, hey, there is a limited in terms of number of withdrawals that you can do on your TSP, right? You know, what are your thoughts on that?
You know, I absolutely agree. And one of those things where as you get into retirement, right, and saying that when it's your money, but you can't get it now.
Yeah.
Not a very good feeling.
You bet, right? You bet, because, I mean, you know, just think about it. I mean, you worked hard for this money, you saved money in there. Oftentimes I tell people, you know, we live in the DC area, the traffic, you have to get up in the morning to go to work with all the traffic, you know. Sometimes you may like your boss, you may not, right? But all of that, and all of a sudden now you get into retirement and they say, oh, you want to take your money out? TSP is saying, no, you're limited, right? Can you talk to us about like number of withdrawals? Can they do 5 withdrawals?
No, it's every month. A federal government employee can only do 4 withdrawals out of their TSP.
Yeah. So they're limited to like 4 withdrawals. I mean, and that's it. I mean, you know, we had a scenario in the office where, let's say Michael, right? Michael retires and, you know, had like, 4 withdrawals, but he wanted to do an extra withdrawal, but he can't, right? Can you imagine? I mean, he was very, very upset. He was very upset. And because of that, I mean, he can't wait to take money out of the TSP. And I tell people about, you know, the good thing about TSP is during the accumulation stage, I think it performs very well. I think the main issue is like when they get to the withdrawal stage. Yeah,
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. All right. So why don't we talk about like the common mistakes in the TSP, like, you know, the withdrawals that they make, you know, oftentimes they use it. Is it with your experience that people will take a lot more withdrawals? Can you talk about the withdrawals that they make and how is that going to affect their taxes, or also maybe kind of like depleting their TSP account?
Yeah, that happens quite often. I think people, when they kind of think of their TSP, right, as retirement and saying, hey, this is the pocket money that I need or that I want to use, right? I can just use it when I retire. Well, the thought process, this money really has to last you throughout retirement. So basically when you take it, how much you take it, the frequency that you take it, all very, very important.
Yeah. And then you know what? I think you mentioned something which is really, really important, is like, you know, to last you around during the time in retirement. And like we often tell people, like there are 3 stages in retirement. I mean, you talk about longevity, people tend to live longer. I mean, so you want to make sure that money to last you, right? So can you talk to us about a little bit about, do people factor in taxes when they make this withdrawal? Because people come to the office and worry about like they're paying a lot of taxes, but because of the TSP withdrawal.
Yeah, I think what happens is that, you know, when you're in the mode of I need money, right, the last thing you're thinking about is, what is it really going to cost me from a tax perspective? They just try to take the money out and say, oh, I'm going to pay the piper later.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is that the IRS, what they're going to say is, hey, look, if you're taking money out, you got to pay the taxes as you're taking it, right?
Exactly.
Or you could cause penalties later on in the future.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very important that they kind of look at that and say, you know what, based on if I'm taking the money, right, I got to make sure I plan for it accordingly.
Yeah, because when you take, how much you take and when you take it actually makes a big difference, right? Because there's also something about what we like to call the sequence of return risk, right? Meaning that when you're taking money out and then also the market is down, what can that do for the portfolio?
Yeah, it can have a really detrimental effect to the portfolio, because think about it, you know, in every investment strategy, right, the whole thought process is you want to buy low and sell high. Right? But again, I don't have a crystal ball. Do you have a crystal ball?
No, I wish I do, right? Nobody does. Yeah, definitely nobody does.
But we do know that the market's going to go up, it's going to go down, and it's going to stay sideways. So the question is, you know, if I knew when the market was going to be at the lowest, I could take the money out, you know, when it's really, really high, right? And so that's the challenge in terms of your points, because of return risk, is that we're never going to know, right, when the market's going to go up, when it's down. But, you know, if we don't take the money at the right time, though, causes a longer impact. And it takes a lot longer for, you know, your investments to recover if you're taking it out at the wrong time.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I think that's why planning is very important, because as you know, in the office over here, we tend to kind of like find ways how to kind of like avoid that mistake. That's why we tend to make sure that we look at like bucket strategies, right? We put money in certain buckets and then put money in certain buckets. That way, thereby, if in the event that the market is down, we can go to one bucket and then be able to take money out without, avoiding that, having the client to actually sell and then be able to take a loss, right? So you mentioned something. I think the emotional piece of it also comes into play with this, because as you know, I always tell people, I said people have an emotional attachment with their TSP, which I get it, because it's their money, they work hard for it. Naturally, human being, we are wired in a way that we were very protective of our money. And then because of that, we do see a lot of emotional decisions that are made in the TSP. To your point, we all know that you need to buy low and then sell high. But in times of market volatility, is that what you see, or do you see the opposite?
You're absolutely right. You kind of think about, especially those who are close to the retirement, right? Look what happened this past March, April timeframe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've seen, we do this with a lot of clients, right? Say, look, you got to talk you off a ledge, because guess what? You worked so hard for your money. You're very close to retirement. When you look at your statement and you say, look, I have $500, $600, $700, $800,000, and the next day it's worth $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. It's a sticker shock, right? And panic ensues, because then it's like, hey, I was on a plan, I was on track, I'm retiring in a few months, and now I can't.
Yeah.
So then what do I do?
Yeah.
So to your point, though, proper planning is super important, but also, as part of our role, is that we try to tell clients, look, are you on track? Are you off a track?
Right.
If you're on track, you just got to stay the course.
Yeah, and I think that's the time. There's a very critical moments where we come into play as finance advisors, right? So at times like that, most people, there are two things that are happening. You have the emotional distress, meaning that, one side of you is telling you that, take all of your money in the stock market, you're going to lose it. The other one is basically saying, no, keep it in there, right? And then we try to let clients know when they come in to give them a perspective, right? Because, your TSP is an asset, but also their house is an asset. Well, oftentimes when we give the analogy to people, I say, well, hey, if you have your house now and then you bought that house for, let's say, $500,000 5 years ago, but then all of a sudden the housing market went down, but now that house is worth about $450,000, and you're going to sell it. Most of them will say, no, I'm not going to sell it, I'm going to keep it, right? But it's the same scenario. I thought I'd go out and say, why don't you want to sell it? Because they say, if I sell it, I'm going to take a loss. Well, it's the same thing with their TSP. Usually people that end up making emotional decisions and then be able to go sell, I think they tend to lose a lot in the market.
You're absolutely right. And that's what we really call timing the market, right?
Yeah.
And again, no one has a crystal ball. So if you look at really timing the market, what I've seen, I don't know about you, Mamadou, but what I've seen a lot of times is, people make an emotional decision, like they did in April, right?
Yeah.
Took money out, they put it in the G fund.
Yeah.
Well, guess what?
Yeah.
Look where the market is today. They're still sitting in the G fund.
Yeah.
And so as they want to re-enter the market, what happens, right? Boy, well, what did I do? Well, I sold high, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm trying to wait to get in the market, then the market's even higher.
Yeah.
So what did I do?
And you know what's funny though with that though? Oftentimes they tend to say, I'm going to time the market, but you have to be right twice.
Absolutely.
Meaning that you got to know when to sell to get out of the market, and you also got to know when to buy into the market again. And we know that a lot of times, when do people try to get into the market? When everybody is looking at the stock market and say, it's going up, it's green, I'm making a lot of money. That's when everybody is jazzed up. They want to go in and then buy. But then that basically goes to contrary to what we are saying, because now they're buying high, and then they get into the market and the market goes down again, they panic, and then what do? They go and sell low. So if you do that 1-2 times in your retirement, or even before retirement, you could absolutely run out of money. And then that's probably the worst thing that you want to be in, to be able to run out of money in retirement. Okay, it could have a significant impact, not only you, but your family. And I think that's what we do best in our office over here, to be able to have this dialogue, be able to put a plan in place for folks. That way they can have a profound retirement.
And most of the people that do that, they really need guidance, right? And this is where working with a professional, working with a firm like ours, gives them the ability to say, you know what, at least I have a team in my corner guiding me, directing me, and reassuring me that I'm on the right path.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
To retire happy.
Yeah, and just like, in our name, the value, right? I mean, we want to make sure that at the end of the day, people want to see whether you can create value for them, right? And then, so in Axiom Value, we know that when they're coming over here, they gotta, it's proven that they will get value in here. Now, so federal government employees, they love their TSP. As you know, I love the TSP. I wrote a book on the TSP. I happen to believe that it's by far one of the best retirement accounts out there. But the reality is, TSP has some challenges. Would you agree that to say maybe TSP is best, what I call the accumulation stage while you're working, but the distribution stage in retirement, there's a lot of challenges.
Yeah, and absolutely. And one of those things that we see a lot of times when you come into the distribution phase is this, right? Is that you're really limited to those 5 funds. And as you're taking money out, right, you want to be very strategic and intentional about where you pull your monies from. The problem with the TSP, or the challenge with TSP is this, right, is that, they take everything proportionally. So if you're in a market where the market is down, right, then maybe you want to take money out of the G fund.
Great
Would
point.
that make sense?
Great
But
point.
wait, you can't do that. So the TSP will take it proportionally, and then you have to go back in and basically reallocate your assets if you need it.
And which is a challenge for most people, right? Because they don't have the technical skills, they don't have this, the knowledge to be able to do that, right? But that's a great point. I mean, literally TSP, what they're doing is to force you to sell that particular fund, whether it's down or not, they'll force you to sell that. I mean, whereas, if you compare that to an IRA, would you be able to kind of like select where you want to get that money from?
Well, absolutely. And it goes back to the planning, right? As we work with clients, we want to make sure that there's a little bit of a buffer of where we know you're going to need cash. There's a cash portion to your assets. But again, we're going to be very intentional about how do we do distributions from your account to make it most efficient.
Yeah, it's amazing when we have this conversation with folks about their TSP, because people come to us in retirement, we advise them. There are times whereby we tell folks, you know what? You need to leave some of the money in your TSP. It's absolutely the right thing for you at this right circumstance, right thing for you. But some people will tell them that, you probably need to move it and then put it into an IRA outside and put a strategy out there. I mean, it's funny that when you tell them, when you start having that conversation initially, you could see in their face to say, oh my God, I don't want to do that. But, I think it's fair to say that after they've done that, they've seen what we have done for them, they feel very, very happy.
Well, Mama, you're absolutely correct. And it brings me to a scenario that we just dealt with recently for a client that came in, met with another advisory firm, right? He took the VERA. He's 56 years old, right? But that advisor said, hey, you should move the money out of the TSP and all of it and put it into an IRA.
Oh, my goodness.
Because he didn't have another job, he had nothing lined up, so he said, you need to access this, when he's during the transition time. So we advised him, look, you're going to lose out of the benefit because you're over 55. You're going to be able to take monies out of your TSP penalty free.
Yeah.
Right? So he would have lost that if he had moved it to the IRA.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm too glad that, she actually came to us. And I think you brought a very good point because, one thing that really makes me go crazy is the fact that I see federal government employees giving like bad advice. As you know, I'm very passionate about working with federal employees. I mean, I want to make sure that, absolutely want to make sure that they can have like a profound retirement. And then because the decisions that they make, one decision is irreversible. You cannot do that. So advice like that, it could be really, really terrible because we come across this all the time. There was a time that a financial advisor, talked to like a client, let's say Mary, when the financial advisor advised them that they need to waive the survivor benefit, but the health insurance. Can you tell the story?
Oh my, yeah. So the client said, you know what, we're trying to maximize what our pension looks like, right? And survivor benefits, a lot of people say, you know what, paying 10% of my pension, that's a lot of money, right? Yeah. For a benefit that my spouse may or may not need. But you know what? As we were talking to the client, we said, look, we get it, but is your spouse going to be reliant on your health benefits, FEHB? The answer was yes.
Yes.
And unbeknownst to them, by foregoing the survivor benefits, God forbid something happens to the federal government employee, their spouse would no longer have health insurance through FEHB.
Well, that would be disaster. That's why we're saying that if you have done this, you better make sure that you hold on to the spouse, right? Because they can't go. Because if they go, then they're going to lose the health insurance piece. I mean, which when you think about it, though, that is really, that's really bad, right? Because I'm so glad that that individual came to us. Because, to be fair to that financial advisor, I don't think the strategy was a bad strategy. I think the gap here is their knowledge of the federal benefit, right? Because I can understand why somebody will come to you and say, hey, why are you paying 10% of survival benefit? Why can't you keep that 10% penalty? Let's go get a life insurance on your head. That way, when you die, we could use the life insurance proceeds and then be able to turn that into an income so that we can give that to your spouse. It makes sense, right? But the problem here is we're dealing with federal government employees. Their benefits are very complicated. So in this scenario, while that scenario might be good for somebody who's not a federal employee, but it would devastate him for somebody who is a federal employee. So stories like that just gets me going every single day, because you can, that day I left and then went home, feel like, my God, we've done our job, because we saved somebody, you could probably say tens of thousands of dollars, because we know that what is the biggest risk in retirement? It's healthcare. Can you imagine if you don't have a good healthcare and now you get sick? And now you have to think about, oh my God, what decision did I make, right? That's crazy. But anyway, we can go on and on about that, but I do believe that, our channel here, this is where we're going to do a lot of conversations about federal benefits. And I think what's going to be different with our channel is the fact that we're going to be able to talk about specific benefits, but also talk about real life examples, right? That people will know. I mean, we're not going to jeopardize clients' name or anything like that, but at least, if we're able to show them real examples, the things that we go through, how we make a difference in their life, and the costly mistakes that federal government employees were about to make, and we're able to kind of point them in the right direction. I think that excites me. I don't know about you. I know you're very passionate about this.
Yeah, I love it. And I think, a lot of federal government employees feel like they're alone. By doing this, they know, look, you're not alone.
Yeah.
This is not an uncommon thing.
Yeah.
And you know what? We can get there together.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I think, time and time again, we do a lot of meetings or webinars. We do a lot of workshops, right? But I think, I'm really excited about this YouTube channel because federal employees come to us and say, hey, Mahmoud, this is great. I mean, but what if I cannot attend the retirement workshop? What if I cannot attend that webinar out there? So I think they advocate that, we should have this channel so that we can put in more content in here. That way federal government employees can feel like, hey, there's a specific place that we can go to and then really get real talk about their benefit, but real scenarios, right? And you can see I'm very plain, right? I mean, I don't use big words and stuff, right? So I wanna be able to take very complex benefit subjects and then be able to break it down in a very easy way. That way you can understand. Because at the end of the day, I happen to believe that clarity is what our clients need. Clarity, what federal government employees need, right? They don't need a financial advisor who is going to be smart talking about beta, alpha, and all of that. All what we need is to be very specific about the benefit, explain them. That way they can relate to you and be able to understand it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm all about keeping it simple, right?
Yeah.
Keeping it simple.
Yeah.
Clarity gives you confidence.
Hi, thanks for watching. I'm sure you get some value over here, but if you're a federal government employee and you're looking for clarity around your benefits, whether it's your TSP or whether it's your pension, whatever it is, right, please give us a call or, watch some of our videos that we post in here, because that's where you're going to get clarity and be able to make a profound difference in your retirement.